another thing we should probably touch on, because, you know, a lot of people, I put out a clip the other day with Judy from Digital Outlook. She put me on the spot. She asked me, give me a price prediction for XRP. And, you know, we don't normally do price predictions, right? But we try our best to explain the mechanisms about how the structural price would become a necessity, right? So maybe I will put you on the spot now and ask you, and I'm going to compliment, of course, what you have to say about this, because I think when we start to talk about a decoupling, we start to talk about these use cases, and we're talking about institutions and trillions of dollars, right? Essentially all value going on chain. It's going to be interesting, right? How XRP's valuation, and not just XRP, some of the other complementary technologies are going to be stop being driven really by retail sentiments, because they're not, but being driven by something far more powerful. And we're talking about liquidity, right? Liquidity depth and the throughput capacity for settlement velocity. So maybe I'm going to ask you now. I speculated, if you really think about it, and we factor in all these contributing forces, that, you know, I should have, I don't know if I should have said this, but I said it could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think there's some mathematics there, and many people would definitely disagree with me on this, but, you know.
Well, I think people look at it through the lens of market cap, and we've never seen anything that has a market cap that is that large. If you had asked people 10 years ago if there could be $1 trillion company, they would have said you're crazy, right? But with the agentic economy and the amount of output and GDP that we're going to be able to generate from the efficiencies created from these progressive technologies, including blockchain, I think that, you know, people think in terms of per capita or per person. You have unlimited growth. It doesn't take 9 months to make an AI and then another 18 years to teach it something in order so it can be a productive member of society. Literally, they can just spawn and be given orders, and then they are productive, right? So the pace at which we're going to see economic growth with the implementation of that, you know, the frictions that are going to be removed by a 24/7, 365 settlement, the velocity of money that's going to pick up in the economy that'll cause GDP growth. All of these things factor into the large numbers that you just mentioned. And then outside of that, you've got these other economies that are going to come online in the next 5 to 10 years as well. You've got metaverses. If Elon gets his way, we're colonizing the moon and Mars. You need interstellar commerce, and each one of those is going to have their own GDP and output and economics, and you need interoperability. So for somebody to say that, you know, the market cap of this can't reach a certain point, I think is a very limited scope, and they're just living in the paradigm that we have today without looking into the future about all these other things that are going to play out over the next decade. So for that being said, you know, Greg Kidd called XRP an intergalactic currency. You know, there's a few people that are very intelligent that say some things, and you're like, I hadn't really thought about it that way. But if they're talking about it, I mean, Greg Kidd's a prolific investor. He's done very well. He used to work for the Fed. He's also got, you know, Ripple, the meeting with the Fed in 2014. There's a there. And so with that being said, you know, I think that they're going to need to jumpstart this thing. I think they're going to need to drive liquidity into XRP to push it to a price where it's viable. And then beyond that, it'll continue to compound to the numbers that you talked about, and maybe even beyond that. I mean, David Schwartz has even talked about $1 million XRP in one of the tweets that he put out.
Yeah, that's
not tomorrow. It's not anytime soon, but over a long enough period of time. The other thing I'll say is most people underestimate what can happen in a decade and significantly overestimate what can happen in 12 months or a year. So, you know, if you think through that paradigm, the majority of the public are, and even myself, like, cool, we could see some significant price appreciation this year. But if your thinking spans a decade, like, and at the pace at which technology is progressing and many of the things I just mentioned before, the size of the GDP globally or interstellarly, if that's a word, is going to be significantly greater, orders of magnitude larger than it is today. And to be able to facilitate that value at scale, if there's a limited supply of a token, like 100 billion,
which is nothing really.
Yeah, in comparison to all of the commerce and transactions and settlement that needs to take place there. And then if you were to compound that with making the asset, you know, premium collateral, like I believe it's going to be, much of that's going to be locked up and held away and put in ETFs or other structured products or liquidity pools or AMMs or DeFi, where it's not available for transfer. So then it reduces the supply even further. And therefore that price would have to be even higher in order to facilitate all of that economic transfer, right? So
yeah,
well, just a lot of things that compound that lead me to believe that you're pretty accurate with your assessment.
We look at XRP's trajectory and the broader ecosystem. Again, it's not about catching the next hype cycle. We're talking about becoming the foundational infrastructure for the tokenized economy and financial system. And it's really the world's largest financial institutions that are actively building this. So to your point, as far as a very high price, I think that's interesting because I always thought there would be an infinite price, an infinite cycle. And this can kind of like feed each other in itself with a loop. Because when I think about the future of finance and the relationship, for instance, between like XRP, XLM, a few other technologies in this ecosystem, I feel like it is an infinite cycle, one that feeds into itself because it grows stronger and more resilient over time. And if you think about it, like XRP provides liquidity that's needed to power these large scale institutional transactions. But what does XLM do? It ensures that smaller everyday transactions, if that's even a thing, right? We'll see. But together, it kind of creates this unified financial ecosystem that's a closed loop. So everyone just kind of benefits.